All right, team. Good morning. Welcome to the PTN Ice Daily Show. We're here bright and early this morning here on Leadership Thursday. My name is Alan. I'm happy to be your host today. Currently have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Operating Officer here at ICE. Busy morning, off to coach a couple classes and then jumping on a plane to go down to Nashville to start setting up for the sampler. So now or never, right? Leadership Thursday also means it is Gut Check Thursday. Gut Check Thursday this week is going to be the exercises that we're going to do Saturday night for our sampler workout. So if you are not going to be there in person, but you want to follow along, you can follow along remotely. This week's workout, two-part workout, meant as a partner workout and a team of two as well. So we start with a 12-minute AMRAP. How this rep scheme works is that your partner does the next movement in line. So it's 3 power cleans, 3 burpees, 3 toes to bar. And then the next time you come through, it's 6, 6, 6, 9, 9, 9, 12, 12, 12, so on and so forth until you hit the 12-minute AMRAP timer. So if I'm partner one, I'm doing 3 power cleans. My second partner is doing burpees over the bar. I come back in, I do toes to bar. My partner does power cleans, so on and so forth, ascending the reps up the ladder. Our weight this week for the barbell, 135 for guys, 95 for ladies. So you're going to work your way through that 12-minute AMRAP. As soon as the AMRAP is done, a 5-minute timer is going to start for part 2, and you and your partner are going to find a max clean each in that 5-minute window. It can be squat or power. I tested this workout solo last week. This workout was written by Mitch Babcock, and it was pretty gross solo. I think some people are going to get really out of control in the AMRAP with their partner and get to the second part and not be able to do the heavy clean. So I'm interested to see how this unfolds with the class on Saturday evening at the sampler. Speaking of the sampler every year, last weekend of April. Next year for Sampler 2024, we're moving to Carson City, Nevada, right outside of Reno, right actually on the shores of Lake Tahoe. Beautiful city. So starting next year, we'll be in Carson City. We've traditionally been in the Nashville area, but we are moving the sampler. Tickets are going to go on sale this Sunday, April 30th at noon Eastern. Year over year, most of the tickets for the next year's sampler get bought by those sitting at the current year's sampler. So if you're not going to be there and you want to attend next year, make sure that you set an alarm, set a calendar, block something to be able to jump on the computer Sunday, April 30th at noon Eastern and grab your ticket. Other courses coming your way the weekend of May 6th and 7th. We have a bunch of courses, 2 chances to get cervical management, either out in San Diego, California with Jordan Berry or in Potomac, Maryland with Zach Morgan. You can catch Alexis Morgan in Grand Rapids, Michigan for pregnancy and postpartum live. You can catch Paul up in Minnesota for lower body dry needling. Bike Fit will be in Chicago and Total Spine Thrust will be in Cincinnati. The weekend of May 20th and 27th, even more courses. Jordan will be on the road again for cervical management, this time in Fort Worth. Zach Long will be in Boston for Fitness Athlete Live. Joe Hanesco will be in Rockville, Maryland for Fitness Athlete Live. Mark will be in Tennessee for extremity management. That'll be at Hendersonville area. Bike Fit again will be on the road, this time out in Bellingham, Washington. Older adult will have a triple header in Charlotte, Simi Valley, California, just outside of LA, and then in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we'll be hosting upper body dry needling here at our clinic in Fenton, Michigan. So plenty of courses coming your way between now and Memorial Day. Let's get into today's topic. We're talking about communication. We're continuing our new leader series. So we've been doing this every other Thursday now for the past couple of months now. Starting a little bit theoretical and now getting more applicable as we go through the weeks. And we'll finish this off over the next couple of weeks with talking specifically some questions from the audience about Medicare. So that'll be coming your way as well. Whether you take insurance, take cash, we'll be talking about Medicare. But today we're going to talk about communication. We're talking about communication, the application of communication, of actually doing it, both from you interacting with your patients, your ideal consumer and client, but also working with the individuals and communicating with the individuals on your team. So let's review the most common digital communication types because this is primarily how we're going to be communicating. Even in a busy clinic where we are physically with each other in person, we are often maybe communicating digitally because we only see each other in passing and we might be sending a message to each other somehow. As crazy as that might seem to see somebody all day but not really have a chance to talk to them, we're primarily communicating with everybody in our lives, work and personal now digitally. What are the three main types? We're all very familiar with email. We are very familiar, maybe too much, with text messages, and then some sort of social media, workforce management type platform. We have obviously consumer driven social media, Instagram, if you're watching this right now, YouTube, that sort of thing, but also workforce management media, things like Slack, things like Workplace. Now, what are these communication types meant to replace? They're all meant to replace a communication type that we had before computers were created. What are they? Email was really created to replace the written letter of putting a letter in the mail. Dear Sally, 7 years ago was the last time I saw you before the terrible war began, that sort of thing. This is more of a long form communication style meant to replace written letters. What's nice is it creates a digital message history that's easy to search. And we'll talk about why that's important when we talk about some of the other ones here in a second. Next, we have text message. Came along actually much later. I know I'm dating myself a little bit. Text messages came much later than email. We've had email about 20 years longer than text messages. Text messages are meant to replace in-person communication. That's meant to be short, quick, and transient. Why? It's really hard to go back. You all know this. If you ever tried to find something in a text message, they're hard to search. You end up just scrolling a lot. On newer phones that are cloud-based, the messages get archived and stuff. It's just really hard to go back and find something in a text message, which is why it probably shouldn't be used for any sort of meaningful long-term conversation, either between you and a patient or you and someone else. You should really not try to run a business on text messages or something like that because it's so hard to search compared to email. And then talking specifically about workforce management apps, things like Slack, things like Workplace, kind of meant to replace day-to-day communications. You can do a lot of things on these apps. You can attach files, you can leave voice memos, you can leave video memos, you can obviously type words out as well. A lot of different ways to communicate inside of the Workforce app. And then finally, despite what some people may think, there are phone calls, which are not digital communication, not an efficient way to talk. Phone calls are kind of meant to replace really important long form conversations of, I think of what is the purpose of a phone in this day and age for my mom to talk to me, right? For my mom to tell me what the neighbors have been up to the past couple weeks. Really important long form conversations, talking to grandma, that sort of thing. But really, in this day and age, not an efficient or quick way to communicate, but important to maybe call and deliver some bad news or apologize or something. Still important, but for the most part, not how we're primarily communicating. Think of anybody that's ever tried to call you and ask you to email them something and you have to write down or type out their email and you're spelling it wrong and you're just like, geez, could this just have been done over email in the first place? Why are we talking about this on the phone? So phone, not digital, not efficient in this day and age. So how are these used? I see these misused a lot when we talk about communication. Primarily, we see email really misused. If it's meant to replace the written letter, then kind of our society's expectation for an instantaneous response for email is really unjustified, right? Of most people, if you don't answer them, they're expecting you to answer them. And even some people, if you don't answer, sometimes within minutes or hours, they will call you, they will message you a different route and ask why you have not returned their email, which is really not the point of email, right? You wouldn't put a letter in the mail and then call somebody 4 hours later and ask them if they got your letter. You'd be like, no, it's going to take a day or two. Give me a second. So this is really kind of abused. What are averages when we talk about what is the expected response time? We have some data on this actually. So The average response time to an email across all businesses in the United States is 42 hours. That's kind of long. I would say the sweet spot and what a number of customers have rated as the perfect response time is somewhere in the window of 12 hours or less. Obviously, instant would be great, but most people say, hey, if you answer my email in 12 hours, I'm pretty satisfied. If I email you in the morning and you email me by the end of the day, that's good. Or if I email you in the evening and you get back to me sometime during the next day, the next morning, then I'm pretty satisfied with that answer. And that seems more realistic than instantaneous, but also a little bit faster than 42 hours. What we do need to know is that half of all people looking to purchase something, product or service, are going to purchase with the organization that responded to their email first. So keep that in mind. It's important. It may be unrealistic to answer your emails instantly, but people are looking for a response and they're looking for a timely response. It's a primacy thing. Whoever answers first is likely to make the sale. So keep that in mind. We need to find the sweet spot between feeling like you can't put your phone away to answer your emails, but also recognizing that the first one through the door gets the sale. So we need to recognize that. How are text messages misused? We kind of talked about this earlier. These are meant to replace in-person communication. If you think back to 1950s era, skinny ties, too big of dress shirts, walking around the office. When you walk to somebody else's desk and start talking to them, whatever you would do there, that is what a text message is meant for. So you would not have significant conversations, right? You'd probably have a meeting about that in person, or you'd be taking notes or something, but just general day-to-day communication. Hey, how are you? Hey, can I borrow a pen? Hey, really short, quick, transient communication. Far too often, texts are used for really lengthy, deep, meaningful conversations, especially related to work, in a way that most people are probably not going to be able to keep up with it and keep up with it in the level of detail that it demands. And again, technology limitations, it can be hard to search and find information in text messages in the past. There's not really a ready to access archive system like with email or some sort of workforce management app. So it can be really tough to communicate this way. We also need to recognize that most people are only going to have one phone and they're going to have a mixture of personal and work communication on there, which just kind of further muddies the waters. I think of all of the family group texts I'm in of people just chit-chatting all day long, and I really tune it out. I have most of the conversations I'm in muted. I don't see the notifications. I don't see the texts. Every now and again, I might go in there and just scroll real quick to make sure nobody was trying to talk to me about anything, but I'm not engaged in those conversations, and I never have a plan to because there's simply too many of them, right? They're happening all day long. I look at my phone and I have dozens of notifications, and I think I'm not getting back to that. So we need to recognize the limits of text and that people are probably already overloaded with personal stuff, and adding work stuff to that is not going to be very helpful. And then finally, we have our workforce management apps, optimized a lot more for work-based communication. Nice digital record, again, a way to send a lot of different communications, voice memos, video memos, that sort of thing. How are these misused most often? They're just simply abused. They are meant to replace kind of everything you would do at the job site from 9 to 5 or whatever. They are meant to kind of stretch work hours out, communicate before and after work. And again, a lot like a text message, if not regulated, if not divided, if not structured, they can kind of devolve into this chit chat where people tend to tune it out because too much is going on that's really not meaningful, and folks tend to just start to ignore that over time. So knowing what these types are and knowing how they are misused, how can we start to optimize them? First things first, I would always say when you're talking about communicating with a patient or communicating with someone on your team, I would simply ask them, how do you prefer to communicate? Like what is the one way you're most likely to send and receive messages from? Is that email? Is that text message? Would you prefer like a dedicated workforce management type app where all work related stuff can just be on this one app and in your mind that kind of consolidates it? How would you prefer to communicate? Because especially when we talk about a management ownership thing, we can say this is how we're communicating, just deal with it. But if it's not how somebody prefers to communicate, they're probably going to be really disengaged on it. So keep that in mind, that not everybody likes to use the same thing, not everybody learns and communicates the same way. So what are you most likely to answer? What are you most likely to actually use and send communication on? And just recognize that it might be different from your ideal platform, and it can explain why someone may be not as active on that preferred platform based on where else they might want to communicate. When we're talking about consumer facing communication, we know email is really important. If email is not your jam, and we recognize that instant response is maybe not possible, but we're definitely looking to respond within 12 hours. If you are a text communicator or something else, what you should do is recognize that you're unlikely to answer your email. And if you have a clinic email or even a personal email, however people are getting a hold of you, if they are trying to attempt to reach you by email and you have your email publicly known somewhere, you should put up some sort of autoresponder message of like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Just so you know, I don't check this very often, or I don't check this until Friday at 4 p.m. because I hate it so much. So if you want to get a hold of me in a way that I'll probably respond sooner, shoot me a text message at whatever your number is, right? Recognize your weakness, but also have a way that people get a response so they're not just waiting to hear from you, and they can actually use a system to get a hold of you that you're going to respond on. So consider using an autoresponder. Super simple to set up in a platform like Gmail. Text messages, how to get better at these. Try not to use them to communicate about work. Remember, it's super hard to find stuff. It's super hard to keep up with stuff. And make sure that you're creating barriers as well. It can be easy to answer work texts all day long. So make sure you're creating a barrier where at a certain time you can set up permissions on an iPhone that you don't get notifications from an app. You can set up do not disturb settings, really customizable on your iPhone, so that after 6 p.m., you no longer get notifications from texts or a certain app or something like that. So make sure that you're creating those barriers and you're trying on the leadership side to not have really meaningful, long, deep, complicated, detailed communications via text message, that we move that to email or that we move that to some sort of workforce management platform. And then inside of those workforce management platforms, if you do decide to use one, by the way, they're super easy to use if you've never seen or looked at one. ICE uses one called Workplace, which essentially looks like Facebook. It looks and operates like Facebook. It's super easy to use, but it's completely disconnected, obviously, from Facebook. It's just for people on that platform, just the people working in that organization. So if you're using something like that, make sure you create some structure, different groups, different chat threads for different things going on. Clinic wise, you might be thinking a general thread for everybody. You might be thinking just a thread for billing or leadership or something like that as your team starts to grow, of ways that we can communicate about important stuff that's easy to find, that doesn't get lost in the chit chat. So start to create that structure as you like it, and make sure communication is happening in those separate channels. But also, just like text messages, create an expectation of a normal working hour, of set the standard of, hey, I might message you on here early or late, but I don't expect a response if you are not in the clinic, right? If you're done for the day, don't feel like you need to get on here and answer a question about something. So make sure that we're setting those barriers as well with communication. So communication, how to use it digitally: email, text message, workforce management. Stay off the phone if possible. Remember, email is more long form. We are used to emails taking a little bit longer. Know that the average time is 42 hours, but know that your ideal client consumer is hoping for a 12-hour response or faster, and that the person that responds first is most likely going to make the sale. So keep that in mind. If you're not savvy on email, make sure you have an autoresponder up. Text messages, avoid long, detailed conversations. Try to move them to email or try to move them to a workforce management app. And make sure we structure our workforce management apps so that they are productive and they don't just turn into another place where people can chat text message style. And recognize the limitations on all these and create barriers around normal working hours so that this digital communication doesn't bleed over into personal time as it tends to do. So, communication, I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday. If you're going to be testing with us for the ICE CERT testing, I'll see you tomorrow morning. If you're going to be at the ICE Sampler, I'll see you Saturday morning. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend. Have a good Thursday. Bye, everybody.